Hello, my dear viewers, and welcome to a new episode. In 1004, during the wedding of a Byzantine princess and a Venice duke, and as the groom and bride dance ends, as per usual, no one knows what they say during the slow dance. The attendees finally head for the buffet, and look for the meats. Suddenly everyone freezes in surprise, with their eyes locked on the bride's hand. Checking the ring? No, my friend, it was more serious. It wasn't about what the bride was wearing, but what she's holding in her hand. The bride had a golden fork in her hand, that she wanted to eat with. My friend, this was a huge deal at the time. That fork wasn't popular among people, unlike the spoon that had been around since the Paleolithic age, that dated back to 10,000 years BC. The fork wasn't even as known as the knife, which was essential during the Stone Ages, and started being a food utensil around these ages. But the fork was a new invention that wasn't that popular. Since man always refuses what he doesn't know, all the church's representatives in the party started rioting, and protested that it was wrong, that God gave man a natural fork, his fingers. So why man would replace this natural fork with a metal man-made one? They considered it as defying God's will, and an insult to the church's protocol. Fork, I did all that? This idea will haunt the fork for a while, that even when the Byzantine princess died years later, the one that used a fork in her wedding, because of the plague. Then the Cardinal Saint Peter Damian will say that it was her divine punishment for her arrogance in using the fork to eat. Let me take you 5 centuries forward, my friend. Specifically in 1533, also in a wedding, but this time the bride is Princess Catherine de' Medici and groom, to be France's king, Henry II. They're slow dancing and all is good, and it's almost the buffet time. Then Catherine pulls out a set of silver forks, and uses that set in the wedding buffet. Imagine what happened. It was a set, not just a fork. Nothing, my friend, everyone was eating and joyous and danced on the dance floor. But even more, people liked the forks. Then what changed in those 500 years, abo mead? It's been 500 years. But the second and main reason is the plague. The plague attacked Europe during these 500 years. But the second and main reason is the plague. The plague attacked Europe during these 500 years. The plague years changed the European mindset towards daily habits and hygiene. Royals started considering not using hands to eat as etiquette. That's why princes welcomed the fork. The plague made Europeans rethink their sanitation habits. Why wouldn't there be a medium between our hands and the food, our hands that we shake other people's hand with or wipe our faces? There could be something man-made to eat with and be easy to clean. By time, all this turned into etiquette, food manners. It was not only popular among kings, but princes too, who were present in Catherine's wedding. Over time, princes started copying her, and as a result, by 1600, the fork became essential in all royal kitchens. Our story today, my friend, isn't about forks and buffets, but about etiquette, or rules that state that something as simple as how you eat, can make the ones around you either accept or reject you. In these 2 examples, we know the 2 most important features of etiquette. The first one is variable, and the second that they're always decided by others. Higher classes like aristocrats and royals. But the question we want to ask, what's etiquette? According to Oxford Dictionary, it's a customary code of polite behavior. That's the explanation, abo mead. Be patient, my friend. The catalogue of polite behavior in a society or a group. Come on. Abo mead, we all have polite behavior. What do you mean greater than now that's impolite? You need to differentiate between etiquette and manners. What's that, abo mead? Etiquette and manners. Good manners have been around since the beginning of existence, and since the first family lived in the primitive cave. In this family, a mother tells her kids what to do and what to not do, to not have animals eat them. The first documented form of good manners is really ancient, in the book of Ptahhotep in 2400 BC, the ancient Egyptian vizier. That book included a set of advice on dealing with other people, like how to sit or when to laugh. There's also Confucius writings, that contains many guides on dealing with people. But on the other hand, the word etiquette appeared in the 18th century. The word means, keep off the grass, and it was used by the gardener André Lenotre, the landscape architect for King Louis XIV's Palace of Versailles, and put it up a sign to warn the nobility and visitors of the palace to not step on the grass. When the nobility dismissed this and stepped on the grass, the king issued a decree that the nobility walk within the borders of the etiquette, as in away from the grass. Nowadays, my friend, in University of Cambridge, you can't walk on the grass unless you were a professor or accompanying one. You can't take a shortcut in the university. You have to walk around the garden. If you're working on a PhD and didn't finish yet, you still don't walk on it. The grass. Later on, things took on another level. It wasn't just about the grass. The king made cards for the nobility, to specify who stands where and sits where in the guides of each party. Wait, abo mead, were the nobility that chaotic? To the extent that they need guide cards on standing, sitting, and eating? Actually, my friend, these cards weren't educational. But it was Louis XIV's way of asserting his control on the nobility, without needing a direct clash. Imagine controlling your behavior and sitting, and how to behave without clash or conflict. This was enough to reassure who was in control. Louis XIV's etiquette rules spread in Europe's palaces. Every king kept saying, "No one walks on my grass," and, "I want to control people without clashing with them." Aristocratic classes started adopting this philosophy, as undeclared rules, that kings and nobility can use to stand out from the rest of the people, those who are from lower classes. By time, the standards that proof that someone is from a high class became connected to his extent of knowing and applying etiquette, and keeping up with what's new. If the fork is cancelled, eat with your hands, and if the fork hopped back, we'll buy the set. Everything is as decided by kings. Kings say if a behavior is virtue or vice. That's the difference between etiquette and manners. Etiquette became the politicization of manners, and have it serve politics. Etiquette was a secret language that instills class distinctions, and a perfect method for politicians to express their views, whether friendliness or hostility, without involving their reign in direct conflict. The same way Louis XIV controlled the nobility, without any clash or conflict. Just cards to tell you what to do. For example, my friend, in 1961 at the peak of the Cold War, between the West, US and England, and the Soviet Union. We see Yuri Gagarin, who, the Soviet astronaut, the first human in history to go to outer space on a full orbit rotation around Earth. After Gagarin came back from space, the Soviet decided to politicize the event, especially in their conflict with the West. They started preparing Gagarin for the second orbit, a full rotation around the globe. Same way as the spaceship rotated the Earth, the Soviet plane with Gagarin would go around all countries in the world. The Soviet considered it the most important diplomatic trip in history. Gagarin would go around the world to break the Soviet Union's isolation, and increase the power of the Union, as he's a scientific and human symbol. All away from the Cold War. We don't war, we want science and discoveries. The Americans are the ones who want war. It was hard for countries to refuse it for political reasons, or else they would be refusing a symbol of human progress. This was a smart protocol maneuver to embarrass the countries hating the Soviet, the countries that decided to counter the move with the one thing they can do, which is also protocol and etiquette. Aren't you fighting with etiquette? I'll fight back with the same weapon. And indeed, before Gagarin's arrival in the UK, the Prime Minister issues a decree prohibiting any friendly reception of Gagarin. But as soon as Gagarin arrived, English people and press came up to welcome him. Wait, what? With a warm welcoming that embarrasses us. Before the Soviet used this story to fire the conflict and propaganda against England, Queen Elizabeth II intervened. She decided to break all the royal protocol rules, and send an official lunch invitation to Yuri Gagarin, and also asked to take a picture with him. What's going on? All that was against protocol. That was the highest honor anyone can receive, compared to the President of the Soviet Union himself, Nikita Khrushchev, who visited England 5 years before it, and only got a tea party. The President of the Soviet Union, not the student body. He drank tea and left. When Gagarin sat for lunch with the Queen, saw tens of forks and spoons, and he was a simple man from a simple family, he didn't know anything about royalty rules. Just like you, my friend, when you go to Starbucks and wait for the waiter. He kept thinking how to get out from that etiquette issue, but then he held the first spoon he saw and said, "Let's eat like Russians." Meaning, just keep it simple. And before any counter-reaction from the English, the Queen grabs the spoon and says the English researcher, Christopher Riley, said that the US and England's allies denounced the Queen crossing the etiquette. But the protocol battle the Soviets started by using Gagarin as a symbol for soft power and received diplomatically and with etiquette by the Queen, dismissed any propaganda. This diplomacy, as Christopher said, helped in preventing a Third World War, especially that at the time there was nuclear tension between West and Soviet. Although the etiquette and protocol were a safe space for conflict between countries. on the hierarchical aspect of each king and his people, increased the isolation of these kings, and pushed them further away from lower classes, because they were originally made to separate the ruling class from the people. The philosopher, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, in his book about education, where he offers alternative etiquette and rules of one's behavior in society that are against the aristocratic etiquette, said that the king's etiquette didn't make them polite, it actually made them egoistic and tyrants. That's why when the French Revolution broke out in 1789, and had Rousseau's writings as one of its causes against etiquette and aristocratic classes, and the most famous line, which was attributed to Queen Marie-Antoinette, when she was told poor people don't even have bread to eat, and she replied, "Let them eat cake." She said if they can't find bread, maybe they can eat dessert or whatever they like. Although historically the quote isn't true, it originated from Rousseau's writings, who attributed the story to a queen prior to Marie-Antoinette, to show that all what matters to the royalty is the food etiquette. In his book, Punk Rock Etiquette, the writer Travis Nichols says that the etiquette is the peaceful and smart way for a strong establishment like the royalty to deal with its enemies without conflict. But at the end, it wasn't the method where these establishments can solve their issues with the people, nor problems like hunger and justice. It doesn't matter what we eat, but how we'll eat. That's why Travis said that when etiquette isn't enough, it's first met with protest, and the first thing to be protested against is the concept of etiquette. After the French and industrial revolutions that accelerated the pace of life, etiquette started to fall back between the rich high classes. After the 2 world wars, women employment, the dependence of people on fast food, and having simpler outings than nobility parties, all fields using etiquette started disappearing. This was because of democracy and social equality, and specifically the emergence of a new class called the middle class. So if the etiquette was made to distinguish people from social classes, and put strict rules between classes, when the middle class appeared, there was no longer a need for class distinction. For example, in the movie, Soft Hands, in 1963, that tackled Egyptian Revolution of 1952, and was about the prince, Ahmed Mazar, who was holding on to the etiquette rules, even though these rules were cancelled, and there was no room for them in the modern age. If I ask you, my friend, who do you think is the royalty most loved by the people? Karim Benzema, A.B.O. Meade? No, I'm talking real royalty. People cannot like a warrior, or a rich man, or a great king, but on the opposite, they were attached to a simple princess from Wales, Princess Diana Spencer. In her memorial in 1997, the British, for the first time, allowed the public to sleep in Hyde Park and public gardens, to save up space for mourners, in a funeral that'll be watched all over the world by more than 2.5 billion people. More than the World Cup. The question here, why was everyone so attached to that princess? Some analysts say that Princess Diana had a quality of an approachable demeanor. It was the first time people see a princess acting like them, with a friendly attitude away from protocols. She broke the etiquette rules in any chance she got. She enrolled her kids in a preschool to learn how to deal with people. They were the first royal children to receive education outside Buckingham Palace. Imagine sitting next to a kid in school, and say, "Who made these good sandwiches? I'll take them." And then find out the Queen did, with the royal guards watching you because you're stealing her grandkids' food. When you hear the word princess, the first thing comes to mind is aristocracy. But look here, that's Princess Diana in an event with her kids at school, barefoot, fuzzy hair, no filter, and messing with mothers on mummies groups. In 1987, when AIDS was shameful to those who carry it, and people were convinced it's contagious by touching, the princess established the first clinic in London to treat it, and publicly handshaked AIDS patients, to end their stigma forever. When people see a royalty hand shaking an AIDS patient with no harm, it would encourage people to treat them normally with no shaming. Even when her husband, Prince Charles, publicly confesses to cheating on her. She attends an event on the same day with a black dress, the revenge dress, which was a clear violation to protocol rules that state that black was only for royal funerals. In short, people saw a person who resembles them, she gets happy, crazy, sad, and vengeful, opposing all etiquette rules that restrain these feelings. What's interesting is that Princess Diana's popularity made all princesses after her go easy with the etiquette rules, after she regained the people's love for the royal family. But the question here, can etiquette be exclusive for royalty? Maybe they were the class that needed political morals the most, to distinguish them and have them manage their conflicts. But doesn't the etiquette have any other story? Maybe one where it's evil and turning with his chair. That's what we'll find out. The American writer, Emily Post, whose writings on etiquette was pioneer in the 20th century, who also established the Emily Post Institute. They uploaded posts? To teach people etiquette rules, she took the etiquette out of being exclusive to royalty palaces and simply redefined it. That it's the set of morals that make people feel comfortable around each other. So according to her, it's not just forks and knives, or using them in a certain way, but the feelings of the ones around you. Or as what she said, if you're able to be aware of others' feelings, then you have manners and it won't matter what fork you use. This freed the etiquette from being some politicized manners, and took it back to being just manners. Manners of behavior that man had set throughout history, to live with others without violence or problems. Many etiquette specialists take back our innate behaviors to this humane thought. For example, the etiquette of toasting, when someone says, cheers, its historic origin is ancient warriors during treaties. When every warrior pours from his glass into the glass of his opponent to ensure that no one poisoned a glass. And also the handshake, that was a replacement for bowing, because people were hesitant towards it. Whoever bowed first meant he's lower in rank. Also, the handshake is a hidden signal that each party is unarmed and wants peace. Even the reply on a sneezer, God bless you, which is also a religious habit, is spread all over the world. It originated in the West during the plague, when the sneeze was a symptom of the disease that could make someone get isolated or kicked out. That's why Pope Gregory VII established, God bless you, as a prayer to expel the disease, and face saving the sneezer. This definition made the etiquette a huge historic memory, for every habit made by man, to create peace and kindness with those around him, like the habit of serving coffee or tea with water, that originated from Ottoman's etiquette, that says, if the guest drank water then he's hungry and gets served food without asking. But if he drinks coffee then he's full. Or hungry but the food smells weird. Herrings, you Ottoman? It was a habit that gently saves the guest from asking for food, and saves the hosts from asking. Emily said that etiquette is based on 3 rules. Every rule helps respecting the other, taking into consideration our differences, and dealing honestly on that base, not pretending that we have a better culture than others, as described by Rousseau, Polite Imperious. That's what etiquette specialists put together as the golden rule, that was intertwined with religions and cultures. Treat others the way you want to be treated, and others added a platinum rule, do to others as they'd want done to them. If you think small of yourself and like to be treated that way, then it's on you. But treat others the way they deserve or like to be treated. If you applied the first etiquette definition that separates between classes, you'll find a habit like when people gather on a giant platter of food with hands as a primitive behavior that makes all participants socially unacceptable. But if you applied the second definition, you'll find that habit in different cultures, like the Gulf and Ethiopia, and Hadramaut Antar restaurant. Some countries go back to ages of some tribes where eating, as described by etiquette specialists, communal experience, that gathers all the tribe on one plate. An Ethiopian proverb says, those who eat from the same plate will not betray each other, just like our Arabic proverb on bread and salt. Here, food represents a pact of safety and sharing. And that the respect and acceptance for culture differences is the real etiquette. That every habit in eating, drinking, and greeting has a long rich history more than the surface of the habit. That's why if you went to China, and saw them eating with chopsticks, and made a video to teach them eating with a spoon, then you're not teaching them etiquette. You actually lack etiquette, respect and acceptance. You made the ones around you feel uncomfortable. As you see yourself falling back on etiquette, you're the only person in that situation who violated virtuousness and etiquette. A virtue not virtual. Plus, you would be forgetting the most important quality of etiquette, that it's variable. It changes with the change of habits, ages, and behaviors, that either comforts someone or not. Every new invention creates new etiquette. We invented phones, Messenger, and WhatsApp, so there's their own etiquette. Don't text someone after certain time. You can't see the message, be online, and not reply you don't text me red hearts when we're in the talking stage. Don't put full stops at the end of the text. Don't thumbs up what I say. And please not the over 1-minute voice notes. It's not a radio. If we're on Messenger, consider that we can't speed it up. Imagine dealing with a variant concept with the variance of cultures, and altered with change of ages, and its only constant is to create comfort and respect, not as a solid or an unchangeable entity that is set for hundreds of years and we have to follow it as it is. That was the etiquette of the others. My etiquette tells you, don't forget to watch the old and new episodes, or looking at the sources, and if you're on YouTube, subscribe. While you're subscribing, my friend, please, hold your finger like this, gently, to the right, a click like that. Don't press too hard to keep the screen clean, and some say they watch Eldahi and sleep, really? This is not an air condition, I'm working hard and awake, and you're